to Today in Mortgage, the show where we try to determine what's real, what's fake, and what you should be paying attention to in the world of mortgage and real estate news. And goodness gracious, there is a lot of news in the financial sector this week. We can't get to it all. The JOLTS report came out yesterday. It was a little bit better than expected, but what we're concentrating on today is the Fed Chair Powell congressional testimonies. So I got Rich Jefferson here with me today, and today you can call me, I don't care how it happens, just get me off this stupid plane landing. Because man, people keep talking about this soft landing, and at this point, man, I just want to get off the plane. So Rich, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. It is a wild place to be right now because, good news is bad news for the mortgage industry and bad news is good news for the mortgage industry. So
we're going to get down into not an article today, but just talking a little bit about what that testimony on Capitol Hill looks like. And first things first, Rich, this was not like a special testimony. This is something that the Fed does annually, correct?
Yes. And then you also have a new party in control. So that new party definitely wants to get out and showcase what their agenda and how they want to push the Fed to move in either direction. So it was a little showmanship like they always are in these political affairs up there. But, Fed Chair Powell, he had some, difficult questions to answer.
Yep, it's a little bit wild, and especially if you're you guys out there, if you're not paying attention to what the Fed's doing. I mean, Jerome Powell pretty much holds the fate of all of our livelihoods in his hands right now, and it's he's doing everything he can to help the economy, and I think he's doing a great job. But you got to be paying attention to this. And so if you didn't watch this, you can go back and I'm sure there's highlight reels, but we're going to talk about some of the key points today. Rich, you pulled down some things. You talked about some showmanship. We'll talk about that later too. But the first thing we have here, we got 4 points to talk through today. The Fed won't rescue U.S. from the debt ceiling crisis. So Rich, tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty clear that the Fed doesn't have any tools to mitigate or manage a catastrophe generated by a debt default. Seems like every single year we have the same argument. So I don't expect any other difference than a bunch of jawboning, but he did make it clear. The only way, just as any other household, the way you stop spending is to put limits. And if they may in fact say, hey, man, you got to cut or we're not going to raise this debt ceiling. And if that happens and we default, the Moody's analyst reports are suggesting that we could lose 6 million jobs and 12 trillion in household wealth would be wiped away. There's all this analytics on what could happen. We don't know because we've never been there before.
Yeah, we've never been there. And I mean, if you didn't know this already, we've actually already surpassed that ceiling. And there's just like some financial tricks that they're playing, borrowing money from themselves to make that last until maybe June. It just devalues, U.S. leadership in the economy in the world.
And U.S. confidence. The world's confidence in the U.S.
And that's just a really bad and unprecedented thing for us to play with. But this idea of the $1 trillion coin, you've been following this idea?
Sure. Yeah.
It's so wild, right? So there's this concept that the U.S. Treasury could mint a $1 trillion coin and go deposit that. And then they would basically have an extra $1 trillion in the budget to play with.
That's basically what we do. They're just suggesting a coin.
Right. But he said there's no rabbits to be pulled out of hats here. That would be a rabbit coming out of a hat. Rich, anything else?
Well, real quick, just a little bit more on Fed Chair Powell. He gets criticized. Us in our industry, we wish we had more people in our industry in Congress. Definitely. Because I believe street, experience leads to better leadership in the public sector. So it's a difficult position to be in, especially right now. But, I'm confident that he's making good decisions. We don't like him, but I'm pretty confident because nobody in our industry likes them. And I don't think we would like anybody that's having to make these hard decisions and do what they're doing. But,
sure,
I feel like he's doing an okay job.
Yeah, well, I mean, sentiment changes when he's raising rates. No one likes him, but piggybacking off of that. Second point we have is the Fed is eyeing more rate hikes.
I mean, we're just a year ago, we were at 0 to a quarter interest rate, Fed rate. And now we're slightly above 4.5% Fed fund rate. And we're likely to see 50 basis points increase here later this month, just based on the reports that are coming in. I mean, we've got a report coming in on jobs tomorrow. Like you said, the JOLTS report came in better than expected, which hurt. We saw rates get worse that day and the day after, and likely today too. So they're going to continue to do what they're going to do. I mean, he didn't act like he was ready to rewind. He said nothing of it. In fact, he said there's not a reset.
Yeah, he said what he always says. He says, look, we're going to look at the data. We're going to do what's appropriate based on the data. And we hear that all along, but every single week it feels like, there's renewed optimism, like, oh, they're not going to raise the rates again. But he keeps telling us this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And Rich, this just goes back to if you're a real estate agent out there, if you're a loan officer out there, you need to be talking about these facts, but you also need to talk about the realities of that person's situation and what makes the most sense for them. And if they're looking to get in the house in the next 3 years, I mean, there's really no time like now. So, Rich, you talked about showmanship earlier, and we were talking about rate hikes. There was just a funny moment where Ayanna Pressley tried to pin Jay Powell down on this yes or no question. She said, yes or no, will you pause rate hikes? And he was just like, I'm not going to answer that question. I get why she did it. She needs to represent her people, but to think that she was going to be able to pen a yes or no answer or get a yes or no answer from Powell on this was just absurdity.
Well, if he would have answered that question, he would have been completely discredited.
You got to shoot your shot when you're in Congress. All right. Third point, Powell acknowledges potential job losses.
Yeah, well, he was getting hammered over this because, just your average American really doesn't understand this, that in order to slow the economy and cool the economy down, unfortunately, more people need to be unemployed. We got a very low unemployment rate right now. Yep. And that means everybody's working, everybody's making money, which is just perpetuating the inflation because they're still out there spending. It's not the only way, but that it's likely the easiest way to get there. So,
all right, Rich, last thing. Powell says the U.S. dollar's dominance isn't threatened. Why is this important?
The U.S. dollar strengthens and weakens all the time, just like any other currency around the world. But the U.S. dollar always ends up on the top. So, he's basically saying, listen, half the world's central bank reserves are U.S. dollar, and there really are no fears.
Yeah, and that's important just because it still positions us kind of at the top of the world economy, right? We're doing as good as we can do. U.S. dollar is still strong. Inflation has come down a little bit, but we still got to do more. And I think that part that we still got to do more part is what he just kept coming back to. We're going to analyze the data. We're going to do what's appropriate. Right now, we have to do more. And like you said at the top of the episode, we might be facing, we came down to quarter point hikes. We might be going back up to a half point hike. But at the same time, like we talked about as well, rates are going to go up. Prices still haven't come down on houses. It just, if you're going to buy a house, you have to buy a house at some point. So, Rich, in light of all this, in light of what we're looking at with the Fed and the news and everything that's happening, how are you talking to people right now?
Yeah, so what? The rates are high. I would take the opportunity, get the concessions, do a 2-year buy down, a 3-year buy down, using those concessions, get your property and let it appreciate over the next 10 years.
Yeah, Rich. And on the flip side of that, I mean, we're talking about rate hikes. Rates are high right now. Rate hikes come, they're going to be higher. And so it just feels like, the waiting game is a fool's game right now. It's a decision that everyone has to make for themselves, and the best loan officers, the best real estate agents can really coach their people through that. And so Rich, that's what we're trying to do here. Hey, we're not going to do a rating of this because there's no article. We could rate Congress, but we know how that would go. But I do want to make sure before we sign off that everyone out there knows about the free resource that we put together, and that is how to market yourself in a down market. In the resource, you're going to find 5 tips on how to market yourself in a down economy to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position to sell now and to get ahead later when the market rebounds. So go check that out at todayandmortgages.com. Again, that's todayandmortgages.com. Start marketing yourself, get ahead, and get the wins. Hey, Rich, thanks so much for joining us today. You got any final thoughts on Congress, Powell, what you're doing for the weekend? What's going on, man?
Yeah, man, just to summarize everything, I would say just look at some of the other news. You've got the wealthy all around the world buying real estate in the United States. And that shows the strength of the real estate market. That shows the strength of the US dollar. And then you read some of the news about some of the largest hedge firms and investment firms buying up real estate still. Even your local market investors are buying these properties. If they are buying them as investments, you should be too.
Hey, if you enjoyed hearing Rich's expert advice today, you can learn more about how you could be part of the best network in mortgages and get advice from him. So click the Grow link below to find out more about that. Rich, again, thank you so much. Thanks everyone out there watching. Like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you think about today's episode, and we'll see you next time on Today in Mortgages. Today in Mortgages is produced by Network Funding LP, which is an equal housing lender, NMLS 2297. The content of this program is meant to be a commentary on mortgage and real estate news, and any discussion of rates and/or products should not be taken as an individual mortgage or home buying advice or pricing estimates. And any commentary on this show should not be considered a promise to make a loan. All applicants for a loan must qualify, and you should consult a professional regarding your individual loan scenarios for your financial situation. Visit our website at nflp.com/licenses for all state licensing and other legal information.